What's cracking, people? It's your man, Cousin T, aka the Alpha Wingman, representing high-level technicians, operating globally and beyond. So listen, today I want to discuss the case for August Alsina. Now, obviously, this is easy clickbait, right? I mean, who isn't discussing the situation between Alsina and the recent revelations between he and wife of superstar Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith. Now, here in the select manosphere, we like to take a different view and a different approach towards observing social realities and giving our perspective on ways of life and the way that people in society live their lives. And with that being said, I want to formally announce that August Alsina will be the premier case study for the male Octane observation series. That's right. Mr. Alsina is going to be the first case study for the male Octane series. And gentlemen, let me tell you, get ready, because unlike the female Octane series, Octane Observations by a Seducer, the male Octane series will be an observation from the perspective of a sage. Now, when we broke down the female Octane series, shout out to Master Teacher BGS IBMOR for presenting the framework for the Octane scale. And of course, I included that model in my book, The Seduction Scriptures. But gentlemen, today we are going to carry that work forward and take a closer look at how that scale applies to the men in our current society. And beyond today's podcast, I'm going to go further in depth in terms of the structure of what it takes to present a male version of the socioeconomic basis for a social position for the male side of the Octane structure. Now, focusing on today's case study, we have August Alsina, and I've currently listed him as an outlier. And you'll see why I categorize him as such very shortly. Now, let's go to the breakdown. His world is the world of entertainment. And lately and historically, media has played a large role in how our society has been influenced and also cultured over the course of the last 100 years or so. His sex is male. Height, 6 feet. Weight, 175. Now, his static Octane grade I put at 100 because he's in that space. He's in that sphere of influence. He's got a listed net worth of $4 million, and he has the status of being attributed to a high status female in the industry, of course, that being Jada Pinkett Smith, along with being associated with other high status females. So, going further, we have as identifiers industry trappings, contingent access to socialites and exclusive spaces. Now, I highlighted the word contingent because, as we'll see later on in this particular podcast, the access to socialites and exclusive spaces is contingent upon a person's discretion. Moving on. Further identifiers are trendy and fashionable image curation. Obviously, he has access to image consultants, he has access to stylists, he has access to various agents who present a highly stylized presentation of his lifestyle. Moving on. His environment of operation is Hollywood, also music venues, and especially industry events. Skill sets. I would say projection of charisma, which is standard for entertainers. Stage presence, and also a ladies' man. what he values. Now, from interviews and what is observable from the public's access to whatever is put out by him and his handlers, he values fame, clout, considering the current situation, access to wealth, which is apparent with his relationship with the Smiths, and health. Now, of course, these values are there because of the current situation that we find Mr. Alsina involved in. Fame. Obviously, the now infamous interview of June 30th really shows that the timing of that presentation corresponded with the release of his latest album. Clout. Clout is a word that is thrown around in this current generation of any press is good press. And clout chasing is a phenomenon that a lot of people believe will lead to a viral attention grab. But we'll see how that works out past this week. Access to wealth. That is one of the primary drivers for the way that he has acted out in this particular situation. And what is his current situation? Well, most people already understand that the nature of his relationship with Jada Pinkett Smith was that of companionship primarily. There obviously was a component of intimacy, but when you're flown out on trips, when you're introduced to extended family members, when you have a space in the residence or primary residence, obviously they have multiple properties. But you know what? Let's pause for a moment. Let's get into the numbers. Okay, August Alsina is 27. Jada Pinkett Smith is 48. His net worth is listed at August Alsina's net worth is listed at $4 million. Jada Pinkett Smith's net worth currently is listed at $50 million. But let's contrast that to Will Smith's net worth, which is $300 million. Now that's on the low end. Obviously, the numbers that get reported tend to lag by at least 3 years, depending on their reporting methods. But I say that to say that there's no reason monetarily or from a resource perspective for Jada Pinkett Smith to entertain an intimate or a meaningful relationship with August Alsina. Obviously, he's bringing something to her space that is filling a need that she desires. And that's where we get into why I've listed August Alsina as an outlier with an Octane grade of a 100, but it has a hashtag next to it. Now, in the subsequent videos that follow this one in the series, I'm going to go further in depth as to the differences between the male Octane elements as opposed to the female Octane elements in my observation. But for this case, the reason for the asterisk next to the 100 Octane grade is because he's borderline diesel. He's obviously a kept man. He's been a kept man for the last 4.5 years. Obviously, there are some personal things, some internal things within the Smith camp that led to this particular moment. And I'm not going to speculate too much, but I'll tell you what it looks like to me. This looks like a situation that could have turned out like the Superhead situation of many years past. Gentlemen, if you will take a trip back down memory lane with me for just a moment and entertain this, the cover of Superhead's book, none other than Stephon's book that was a blockbuster for the industry. She divulged stories of relationships and interactions or entanglements, to quote Jada Pinkett Smith, that she had with a lot of industry guys, and what those descriptions were, those situations were. that was the era prior to the use of the non-disclosure agreement, or as August Alsina mentioned himself, before the lawyers got involved to make him hush on the details of the goings on of the Smith household. Trust and believe, there are many, many, many things that August Alsina could have revealed and still could reveal with the penalty of, fines and all other sorts of things. Similar to a tell-all expose that Superhead did, August Alsina is a hair away from being an industry stud or a pass around. And therein lies the reality of this current situation. You see, there are many ways that he could have taken this particular instance. There are many different directions that he could have taken in order to enrich himself, more than just the hush money or the live-in plaything money that he was receiving from Jada. Had he not fallen in love, a statement that he said himself in a freestyle that I guess Oprah analyzed, had he not fallen in love with Jada Pinkett Smith, he probably would have had his business hat on. He would have had clarity in how he wanted to position himself to maximize his potential within the industry. And that necessarily would have not been providing a tell-all expose, but leveraging his relationship into a more lucrative deal with some type of streaming entity, or who knows. I guess I'll just let Papa Pope give you the admonishment for this one. Papa Pope,
do you have to be so mediocre?
This story is still fresh and it's still playing out in real time. But the takeaway that, from my observation, is this. In the industry, in particular as a Diesel from the exotic entertainment industry, there is an understanding that your value is to provide a fantasy in exchange for some other value, be it monetarily. Sometimes they'll pay for a trip, they'll provide a vehicle, they'll fly you whatever. It's an exchange of value, primarily monetary. The catch is that you be discreet about it. So you're selective as to who you interact with on an intimate level outside of the scene space, the club or the private party or the event or whatever. But also, you do not kiss and tell. However, these agreements come with a potential expiration date. And that is what I see in this particular case. He provided what Jada Pinkett Smith needed for the period of time that he did. He provided the fantasy. He provided the pacification. He provided the relief. He provided her getting her back blown out in ways that only a young man can. However, he got greedy. He not only got attached to her charisma, her charm, because let's be clear, it's Jada Pinkett Smith. She knows all types of things. She's had all types of experiences and interactions that she brings to the bedroom, that she brings to a relationship space for a younger man. Now, Will, he's seen it all. He's seen it all and he's done it all. He's somewhere else with his. But for a 27-year-old who's looking at a 48-year-old woman who's experienced, who's got 50 million plus in access, to at least 300 million. He not only wants to be in there like swimwear, he wants to capitalize on their relationship dynamic. And at that point, the fantasy ended. And so what I see is that he made a play for a more substantial relationship with Jada Pinkett Smith. And she's like, Nah, we good. You to jump off. Stay cool with your allowance and everything like that. He's like, nah, he's trying to go for the goal. He's trying to go for the gusto. He's trying to be the mister for her missus, right? And she said, no, the fantasy ended. What his role was ended. He attempted to overstep what his role was, and she ended it. There was a lengthy discussion that happened behind closed doors in terms of how this parting was going to take place. And in the midst of that, he broke multiple rules that landed him where he is right now. Now, in the exotic entertainment industry, here's the most important thing in terms of male exotic dancers. You understand that your value, the most value that you can provide to a woman, is that of a fantasy. Bring her something that she doesn't see every day, something that the average man can't provide her. Eye candy, the fantasy, the sensuality, the charisma, the exchange. And if there are select women that you choose to take it further in terms of intimacy with, you do so cautiously and with discretion, just like in the case of the Office Fuck File. Because in the industry, your popularity comes from what you can do, but your value lies in what you don't do. Which means that your talents, your image, your charisma, those play a part in how popular and how brightly your star shines. However, your discretion, your discernment, and your ability to keep what's behind closed doors is what allows you to retain your marketability and your value. I doubt that his net worth will exceed that $4 million mark by way of Jada Pinkett Smith. I'm sure that this is the end of the fantasy for both August Alsina and for Jada Pinkett Smith. As always, this is your man Cousin T, aka the Alpha Wingman, saying, stay sharp and mission focused. Later.